Today's vlog is going to be more of a somber one. It's going to be talking about death and life after death, or the possibility that we just cease to exist when we pass. I've been thinking a lot lately, the older I get, and with having a lot of different deaths as you get older, you start losing friends, family members, and you start wondering about your immortality. So I've been thinking about that, and a more recent fear, because a lot of people do fear death, even if you have a religion or spirituality, it doesn't seem to always make that fear go away. The idea that you're going to be gone is kind of scary, not to mention the fact that we don't know what happens when we're gone. Now, my initial thoughts recently have been somber in the idea that I think it's very possible that when we pass from this world, we cease to exist, that we're literally biological computers, and when we shut down, we're just no more. And I'm going to defend that in a few moments here, even if you believe in an afterlife. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation and a semi-long ride. Now, I'm mostly going to be using hearsay and things that I remembered, because I always like to give that disclaimer. But as always, I will pop up a few sites down below just for you to do additional reading yourselves to inspire you to search into things a little bit more. I don't remember where I have learned about the many different afterlives that are out there, and I'm not going to mention all of them because every religion and culture, even of the same religion in different cultures, has a different opinion and different thoughts on what happens to us after our physical body passes away. I think it's important to at least start with, I definitely feel like we are more than just physical beings, that there is more of an essence to us. If anything, I feel like our physical body is a manifestation, a physical manifestation of what we are. And I think that we're not just this corporeal form. With that being said, when we physically die, even if something remains, so let's look at it from a scientific perspective. So in science, as far as I remember, here's the hearsay part. I remember in science, there's a saying that energy is not created or destroyed, it only transforms. So if we are beings of energy, when we physically die, that energy that is our physical body and whatever it is that is our consciousness gets transformed and goes on. So in a way that we're always there. However, just like a tree rots and decays and becomes part of the earth again and grows and nurtures the soil, I think similarly that whatever is the essence of who we are, when we die, that energy goes on and can transform. I don't know if that's necessarily still us. A lot of religions, spiritualities, and cultures believe in something of a soul, some sort of a spirit. So when what we are is, the idea here, again, hearsay, is we are the spiritual beings who are living a physical existence or a physical experience. And when we lose the physical body, that spirit is still there. Here's the thing, though. With my most recent somber thoughts, when people have Alzheimer's or even amnesia, are they really the same? What are we if not a collection of memories? If you think about it, our opinions and our feelings are all part of the experience of living, and that experience of living is stored as memories. When those memories are gone, do we lose ourselves? Are we really the same person? Your thoughts, opinions, and feelings and people that you care about are all based upon your life that you've lived. If you think back to when you were a child, everything was new and you were discovering it. So if we do reincarnate, which is one possibility of what happens to us after we pass, why don't we have any memory of that? One theory I remember reading somewhere, I don't remember where, and I know they made a movie on this concept, is there's something supposedly called the Angels of Oblivion. I don't know if this has much support in actual beliefs or if it was more just a movie idea, but the concept still stands for something to consider and discuss. The idea behind these Angels of Oblivion is that when we pass away, we have all this knowledge, we're connected with everything, and when we're about to get reborn into a new life, our minds are wiped. Now, this concept of wiping our minds to incorporate into a new body and a new life is twofold. One, it's to separate us from the pain of losing everything. But two, it's to give us the experience of that fresh experience and learn from scratch again. So what do we really carry with us? Because some people talk about past life regressions, and I've done those. I've actually gone to psychic conventions before. I've spoken with psychics, and they have given me their interpretation through readings that I have certain personality traits and quirks, which they weren't privy to prior to the conversation, that they believe stem from these past lives and these things happen. So you probably have this now because I see this in your past life. They appeared accurate. But of course, when it comes to psychic readings or interpretations, there is a tendency for individuals to be vague and allow you to find the connection yourself. So they'll say like, oh, there's an important woman in your life. Oh, they're talking about my mother. The vagueness, and then you fill in the gaps. Some psychics are taught that are con artists to lead you to answer it yourself. So they lead you down this path. It's kind of like a collective storytelling thing where they're guiding you, but you think that they know the whole story, even though in your head you're filling in the details and the gaps. So I don't know how much of that would have been true for the experiences I had. I don't know, because this was so long ago, but in my head, I remember them giving me information and it clicked and made sense. So in my head, at least, I built it up as them being right and accurate. And this was an example of different type of psychic or spiritual phenomenon being real and true. Take that for what it is. I understand people watching this. Some people will believe in it and some won't. I'm trying to be respectful of those viewpoints, but just because I think it's true, well, there are people who don't agree with the way you think. So get over it. Now, if there's these past lives, what is that past life? Is it DNA memory? Is it biological DNA? Is it actually your ancestors' DNA that continues through? What is it that makes us who we are, other than the collection of memories? Why are we conscious? Why do we have the ability to think and feel and reason? The logic and the ability to interpret, it just, life in and of itself is mind-boggling. And I think that's why a lot of religions exist. How can all of this be? If we are a collection of memories, though, and we have people who have Alzheimer's or amnesia and they start losing themselves, what happens then when their body shuts down? Do they get all their memories back? Is there a bigger picture? What if we're created and we do have one life and this is who we are? So if we do pass from this world and this is the only life we've ever had, okay, that can kind of make sense, but then where do we go? We're talking about, what, billions or trillions of people, if not longer, through the lifetime of the Earth. Numbers beyond trillions of beings and living souls or spirits or whatever. And if you only think humans have it, that's still a ton throughout history. And is there going to be a limit down the road? How long will the Earth be around for? Why was it created? Where do we all go? Where do we all be? Do we connect with everything? Do we have this? There's this concept of, I believe it's called nirvana, in some of the Hindu movements, spiritual paths, that you experience things in each of your life and you are trying to ascend to this connection with all things. Well, when you are ascended and connected with all things, then do you cease to be because you're part of the collective whole? What makes you an individual and why do you have individual thoughts now? When we leave, everything that we've accomplished, all of the skills and abilities, everything that we've collected, all the people that we know is gone. That there's no going back to that. It is gone forever. So what do we bring with us out of our bodies when our bodies pass? If you've ever gone through surgery, and I know there's supposed to be an amnesic effect where it kind of wipes your mind during what happened during the surgery, supposedly when they do anesthetic, so you don't feel anything, you don't remember it either. But it's literally like closing your eyes and reopening your eyes, and hours have passed. That gap in between, almost like a computer turned off in a way. Because and people who say that they've had near-death experiences or they've seen the afterworld, your brain was still operating though. When your brain completely shuts down and ceases to operate, how do we know that there's something disconnected from our brain? How do we know not everything that we have thought about the afterlife? Because people had to have interpreted this from somewhere. Civilizations and societies came up with what makes us who we are, and then they come up with what happens to us after we go, but there's no way of knowing. And if you say, well, I've talked to spirits, or I'm a medium, or I know mediums, or I've had experiences, how do you know those are real and not your mind playing tricks on you? everything that we've interpreted and processed. But I mean, we can even go so far as to say, how do you know anything around you is real? Because when you look and perceive stuff, we're talking about light bouncing off stuff, getting hit by your eyes and your optic nerve, sending it up to your brain and interpreting those images. People don't see things the same way. In a weird way, it's this camera-like vision directly hardwired into your brain to interpret what you're seeing, but technically the room around you is like this blank void and you don't know. And it's just light that is populating it. It's a black void of nothingness that's technically around you. The whole idea of the experience of being alive has been messing with me lately. And I'm starting to think and lean more and more towards the idea that when we pass, we is who we are now. The collection of experiences and physical skills that were built and everything that we've built in life and collected is gone. It is a permanent shut off and disconnect. Because even if we come back, we are not who we are right now. We don't have the same names. We don't have the same biological ties to family. All of that is gone. And it is, in a way, terrifying and also slightly calming, because the idea that you live and experience and enjoy life as much as you can while you are here, and when you do cease to exist, you don't got to worry about it anymore. So what are you worrying about if you're not there to experience the after part? Now, I know some religions, Christianity is very popular. There's even debates on what heaven is. Some people have argued that heaven is being with God, you're connecting, and that sounds very similar to nirvana, this collective whole, connecting with everything, being part of all things. So in a way, are we all the same people? We're all interconnected. What makes us individuals? But then again, it's like everything is here and existence happens. It had to have come from somewhere, which again, where people defend religions. So the whole idea is messing with me. I do want to mention a couple afterlife things and share up some sources, because these are some things that I'd read about. I'm only going to pick like 4 big ones. I'm going to pick the 2 spiritualities that I have the most interest towards because of my heritage, and that of course is Scandinavian Reconstruction and Irish Reconstruction. And then there's a term that I remember hearing when I was studying neo-pagan paths back in the 90s. And then of course the one that everyone seems to hear about, which is Elysium Fields, because that the Greek mythologies were even taught in school and stuff. It was a very popular thing. So I want to talk first about the neo-pagan idea. I remember, and this again is hearsay, so I tried to find articles to match my hearsay, is the term called Summerland. Have you ever heard the term Summerland? I don't remember where I originally read it. I think it was in one of my Llewellyn books. That's where I think I was introduced to the idea of Summerland. But I know back in the 90s, there was a lot of neo-pagans that discussed and talked about Summerland, and they kind of talked about it the way Christians talked about heaven. It is like this field in the spring or summer. It's like, it's comfortable. It's not like too hot. It's like a comfortable, nature's alive. There's plenty of light to be able to see without being blinded. There's like this comfortable feeling. So the Summerlands is like this peaceful, nice, cool weather with trees and nature, and that's the afterlife. And you go here and you just enjoy the rest of your life, kind of like going to a festival or camping retreat forever, but it's a comfortable one that you want to be in. So I at least found one article dealing with the Summerland, specifically on Learn Religions. As always, I'll post these below. And it talks about different ideas of Summerland, right? In some modern magical traditions, it is believed that the dead cross over into a place called the Summerland. This is predominantly Wiccan and Neo-Wiccan concept and is not typically found in non-Wiccan pagan traditions. While there may be a similar concept of afterlife in those traditions, the word Summerland seems to be generally Wiccan in its use. Wiccan author Scott Cunningham described the Summerland as a place where the souls go on to live forever. Wicca, a guide for the solitary practitioner. I have that book. That's probably where I read and got this concept from. So this is an interesting article. If you've read about it or heard about it, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, but I at least wanted to bring that up first. There's also this thing about the Elysium Fields. So this is mythology.net/Greek concepts/Elysium-fields/. And it talks about the Elysium Fields and where they're located. Now, the interesting thing here, if you look at this location part, Homer believed the location of the paradise to be in the west at the end of the earth. He postulated it as on the shores of the Oceanus, a river that flowed around the earth. Now, the reason I bring this up specifically is if you are familiar with Tolkien and his writings, J.R.R. Tolkien, he writes about, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the Silmarillion, all this different stuff. He has a concept of where the elves are from, and they sail out to the west. Now, we know Tolkien actually did some research when he wrote about his stuff and his lore. When he built it for his world for Middle-earth, he incorporated aspects of actual history and religion and stuff from around the world. So I'm not too surprised to see something that has a similar concept of it. But it's a very similar idea of this field, right? So in Greek mythology, the Elysium Fields are the paradise where gods and nobles spend eternity in the afterlife. The inhabitants are believed to live in perfect happiness, similar to the Christian Garden of Eden. The Lucius Meadows, the inhabitants make music, sing, and even play sports. So this idea of this eternal happiness, we always see this, but again, how do we know? How many people have had experiences where you're convinced that someone that you know and love have passed and have communicated with you, and how do you know it was an actual experience versus a hopefulness in your own mind telling you it's true? The other place I want to talk about was Tir na Nog. Tir na Nog is only one of a plethora of Irish afterlives, but Tir na Nog is the one that I most often hear, and there's a huge thing I could talk about with Tir na Nog. But on this particular site, we're going to irishmyths.com, 2024-0608, Celtic Otherworld. And again, links below. What is the Celtic Otherworld? Tir na Nog and other fairy realms. And this is like an explanation. It's a pretty decent article. It goes into some pretty good depth. But I wanted to draw your attention to this section because these all are afterlives in Irish myth. So Tir na Nog is the land of youth. The way that I remember reading about Tir na Nog originally is you have the Sidhe, which are basically fae or fairies, and you have the greater Sidhe, and it is very possible that the beings that we consider to be gods and goddesses today, such as the Tuatha Dé Danann, right, the children of the goddess Danu, like Brigid, one of my favorites, Bree, Bride, depending on what name you want to use. There's a book of invasions, and it talks about the taking of Ireland and all the different people that live there. And one of the possible theories, and I don't remember exactly where I read it, again, hearsay, is that they defeated the greater Sidhe and they went underground into the fairy realm, into the fairy mounds. That's why the fairy mounds have fairies in them in Ireland. And they call this underworld Tir na Nog, and this is where the Tuatha Dé Danann live, because they used to live on the surface in our world and they were defeated and killed, and now they're in the other world, and they're greater Sidhe, they're more powerful beings of the Sidhe. So they're these beings, and the concept of gods and goddesses is more like a Greek Roman thing versus this other spiritual being and greater spiritual being things that you see inside the Irish mythologies. Really like reading a lot of the Irish myths, definitely stuff that I would recommend. But anyway, so that's the land of the youth, but there's also land of paradise, the land of summer, the land of the living, the other land, the land under the waves, the plain of delights, aka the plain of happiness, right? The plain of many colors, the great plain, the plain of the two mists, Ehem of the apples, Brazil's isle, Falga's isle, fortress of shadows, the house of dawn. So all of these different places are like basically different aspects, and there are debates on if these are all different names for the same place, or if these are all in the same region and there's different locations, I guess almost like different countries, different realms inside of realms, but it's like a myriad of worlds. You see this in different video games and tabletop role-playing games, like some of the old school Dungeons and Dragons, they have different realms, like the Shadowfell, and they have the Fey Wilds, and they have the main primal, like there's a whole bunch of different worlds, and it's built in a similar concept to this. So again, it makes you wonder, but again, if all of these are listed out, who has access to them and how do they get the original names for them anyway? So there's so much to dig into here and think about. There are two other sites I'll share with you on Tir na Nog. So here's another one. This one is irishcentral.com. and also send you to this Learn Religion one as well. So Tir na Nog, the Irish legend of Tir na Nog, and it goes into explaining some of it and some of the stories where they write about it, where it comes from. So again, really great stuff. This is the Tuatha Dé Danann. A lot of people read this as Tuatha Dé Danann, but it's Tuatha Dé. Tua, this is Tua and then Day. Tuatha Dé Danann is the way that I understand it being pronounced. If you're Irish, let me know how close I am. And if you're not Irish, look up some Irish speakers pronouncing the word Tuatha Dé Danann, which again just means children of the goddess Danu. All right, there, yeah, said to be the children of the goddess Danu. So it's referring to a tribe of beings. So there's not an official name. So the Tuatha Dé Danann is a term to refer to these groups of people, which possibly were physical humans who passed and were elevated to godlike status. Or it's another being, or it's just a myth. There's so many ifs, ands, or buts, and that's the thing. Like, we're reading about this as concepts thousands of years later, trying to figure this stuff out. How do we know they were right? And then the last one that I wanted to talk about today was the sort of 3 different areas that you can end up in Scandinavia, and that is you can go to Hel, H-E-L, you can go to Valhall, or you can go to Folkvanger. Now, there is the possibility that both Valhall and Folkvanger exist in Hell. Hell is not the same as the Christians think of hell. So hell, and I'm going to use northmythology.org. Again, this is stuff that I've read about in various books and various articles. But if you've studied any of the sagas and Eddas, you've heard of these places as well. Hel is both a goddess, and Hel is also a place, because Hel was given her own domain, and the place was named after it as well. Hel is Old Norse for hidden. So we don't mean, and there's one L, notice that, versus the Hel that the Christians use. So there's a single L here, and it basically means hidden. And then, of course, like I said, you can read about this stuff in a lot of the sagas and Eddas that you can find that were in Iceland, and they have been translated into English if you do not speak Icelandic. I myself am not fluent in Icelandic, I only speak a little. But anyway, the point that I'm bringing up is Hel is basically like, they almost describe it like being inside the earth, like it's almost like cavernous inside the earth itself. Maybe it is a place usually of darkness. It's usually colder, but it's like this, it's this afterworld. It's not necessarily saying that you're suffering or it's hurting you, but it's definitely not the world of the living. And Valhall, also called Valhalla. Val means like death. Hol is hall. So here's Valhall. It's the hall of the fallen. This is Odin's hall, and it's when they talk about it in Grimnismal, which again, you can look these up online. Grimnismal is translated in English on a couple different sites. We can talk about that in separate videos. But the idea here is Odin keeps his warriors that he's preparing for the end of the world, Ragnarok, to do his final battle with. And they basically fight and die all day. Then they get reborn and they drink and eat. And they describe, a lot of people like, oh, they want to go to Valhall. They want to go to Valhalla. It's not described as a place you want to be. Hell seems more like a place where just normal people go. But Valhall, so when people die, apparently the chooser of the slain, or the Valkyrie, right, will go and select, they're selectors of the slain. They will go and pick, and some of them will go to Folkvanger, which is Freya's hall, and others will go to Valhall, so that they split up the dead champions, the best of the best, and then they continue to train and hone their skills for Ragnarok, because Odin will prepare and he doesn't want to die, even though it's been foreseen that he will. So it's very interesting to look up this, and then, of course, Folkvanger, which is the field of the people. So there's, and this, you know, field of armies is the abode of the goddess Freya. And this is also mentioned in Grimnismal as well. So you have all of these different possibilities on places that people could potentially end up or go to in all different types of cultures. The idea of going on seems to be a predominant belief amongst all the different belief systems out there. Every religion, as far as I can tell, believe that something continues, whether it's a soul or a spirit or whatever the case may be. Now, in a lot of the sagas and Eddas, I know that we talked about hell, but many of them talk about Draugr, which are like undead beings that come back from the grave. Typically, they're described as coming out of their crypts or their graves. And I think that's why hell, to some, is thought of as being like in the earth, because when they come back, usually the grave is like a portal to hell, and they're coming back to the earthly plane through their grave or through their tomb. I think I remember reading somewhere once about putting boulders on top of graves and stuff as well to keep them from coming back. Like because they have to come through their grave. It's a very interesting concept. So after this very long video with a very somber topic, I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What do you think happens to us after we pass away and die? And how can you be sure? Do you base this on your own religion or your own personal beliefs, things that you've read elsewhere? Do you think you know? Do you not know for sure? Does death scare you? Like, what are your thoughts? So anyway, leave those in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. It's been top of mind for me. And since now I'm making a vlog today, I figured today would be a vlog day. I wanted to talk about what has been occupying my thoughts pretty heavily for the last couple of weeks. Yeah. What happens after we die?